Um, so we are going to get started, and I just got to share my screen here quick. I got to get back up. So, um, how's that? Is all working the way it should?
Yes, it looks great.
Perfect. I'm going to minimize. There's so many things to minimize and get out of the way when you're doing Zoom, because there's so many things that pop up on the screen. But for whatever parents or whoever is joining us today, whenever you got questions, I just ask, just put it in the chat, and or you can email me. You'll have my email information, all my other information at the end of this, and feel free to email me at any time. I have a lot of parents on speed dial, especially over the last 2 years with COVID and everything going on in our schools. Parents, just anytime you need to talk or anything you have questions on, feel free to answer. But what I've been covering with parents, especially since school started, this is probably about my 15th or 16th parent meeting training kind of thing. And it's all dealt with our our children's well-being. The well-being of our kids should be our top priority right now. I'm going to be honest, not their academics. I know everybody's heard about how far behind children are because of COVID. And I got to break it to you, COVID didn't just happen in Texas. So our kids are not the only kids who've been affected by a year away from school, or a kind of a interesting year of school, whatever it was that we had, Zoom face-to-face or whatever else happened. We weren't the only people that got affected. The whole world was affected. So our children are right where everybody else is. If we always look at our kids as being behind, we're already starting off on a bad path. We need to meet our kids where they are and keep them going. And so our children's well-being, their mental health, their social emotional world, their behavior world is way more important right now, because when we take care of those areas, the academics just fall into place. And so we're going to look at things that parents can do to help their children's mental health, behavior, academics, and their overall well-being. And so when you join me and I talk to parents, please understand, parents, I'm not asking you for anything other than just some time. Literally all it requires for you to improve your child's mental health, to improve your child's well-being, to improve their behavior, to improve their academics, is literally just some more of your time. And I'm going to explain to you how to utilize that time with your kids so you get the biggest bang for your buck. And so these are the topics we're going to talk about today. We only have about an hour together, and I will do my best to cram it all in. I don't guarantee anything because I tend to go off on tangents and talk and whatever else. But these are the important things that when I talk to parents, please understand, what I ask you to do costs you zero money. It only costs you just extra time with your kids. And it isn't about just sitting with your kids and spending the time with them. It's how you spend the time with them. My background is all about brain research. And so for 30 years in education, almost 29 and a quarter, whatever I'm at right now, my whole background, even when I was a gen ed teacher, special ed teacher, principal, program director, everything, it's all been about how the brain learns and how the brain behaves. And if we don't understand that, then we miss the boat with our kids, because above all else, that's our job, is to make that human brain better and better every day, because then that allows them to lead the life they need to live. And so we're going to talk about laughter, diet, screen time, play, nature, and talking. These are literally the top things we need to look at to make your child's well-being, mental health, behavior, and academics much, much better. And it's really easy to do. So it's always exciting. And so I tell people, this is the stuff I still do. We do brain research back home in Canada still, looking at what's best for kids' brains when they're learning in classrooms, when they're learning at home, what's best for human behavior, regardless of your disability, whether it's autism or Down syndrome or whatever else there is, or even if you don't have a disability. There's still things that the human brain needs and wants and has to have in order to develop the way it needs to develop. And so these are the things I share with parents, because they're things you can do at home. They're things that are vitally important to your child's brain. And that's the thing that changes everything for any human being, is how we take care of our brain. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at each one of these things. We're going to start with my favorite topic, which is laughter. You have to laugh. I will tell you right now, it's probably the one thing in this world we don't do enough of. And let me just preface it, it's the one thing in this country we don't do enough of. I have lived off and on in the United States for the last 29 years. And the one thing I have seen go away the quickest is everybody's sense of humor and everybody's ability to laugh. Everybody's too uptight, too serious, and too wound up about things. And we need to let this go because it is detrimental to not just our mental health and physical health, but it's detrimental to our kids' behavior and emotional regulation, and it's detrimental to their academics. So laughter, let's just talk about laughter real quick. Laughter and humor are an absolute must to the human body and the human brain, and especially for our children. And I always laugh, and you always talk about people, growing up in Canada, I grew up on, spending lots of time on my grandparents' farms. We were a family that would go work on the farm on the weekends to help our grandparents. And I'd never forget, I always get up at 4 a.m. with grandpa, Saturday, Sunday mornings, because there's chores to do. And he would be drinking coffee. And I got this thing called a Reader's Digest book. And a lot of people, you got to be old enough to understand what Reader's Digest is. It used to be this little magazine book, but inside there was a section called Laughter, the Best Medicine. And I always wondered, why is it titled Laughter, the Best Medicine? Do you realize way back then they understood the power of laughter? It literally is the best medicine we have available to human beings. And here's why. When children laugh and when adults laugh, we pull in a lot of oxygen so we can get the energy to laugh. That oxygen goes straight to your brain and wakes it up. It's like a 5-hour energy shot that hits your brain. Then once you start to laugh, there's a chemical cocktail that gets mixed up. It has endorphins, oxytocin, adrenaline, dopamine, all kinds of things get mixed up. That chemical compound that gets created in your stomach and in your body when you laugh is actually more medicinal than any pharmaceutical drug we know of today. And that chemical cocktail gets fed directly to your brain. And what happens when it hits your brain is it hits this thing called the limbic system, which is all your emotions and your ability to keep your behavior in check and your emotions regulated. It hits that first and calms it down. And then it hits your thing called your frontal lobe right up here. It's everything we need to learn and think and process and function as human beings. And it hits that frontal lobe and it literally opens it wide up so you can start fishing in whatever information you need to. Laughter has actually been researched as the best way for teachers to start any lesson in their classrooms. It's the best way for parents to begin anything at home with their kids is laugh first. Laughter is vitally important. And so I'm not going to go over everything I got on my slides, but what I'm going to show you is I'll put my slides into handouts that you guys can have. And you're welcome to have them at any time. I'll send them to Misty so she has copies of them. And then if you want copies, you just ask. But I put information in here that I'm not going to really go over in detail, but there's short-term benefits of laughter. You can take a look at those. Here's the long-term benefits of laughter. One of the things I will tell you as parents and as we experience things in life, so there's some people have this thing called chronic pain, and chronic pain is interesting because it's constant pain by a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that are afflicted by this, especially now in society. And what we found out is laughter is actually one of the best medicines for this because of the endorphins that get released when you laugh. Endorphins are the body's morphine, which is the natural painkiller. The more you laugh, the more this gets released and the more your body learns to make. And it's actually really good therapy for people who have chronic pain. And so just something interesting out of all of this too that we found. So laughter, laugh, laugh, laugh. Laugh as much as you can with your kids. And I got a little video here to show you. I apologize if you can't see it. The one thing we have learned in a year and a half, 2 years of online learning and Zoom is depending on what you're using, if it's a phone or an iPad or a laptop or whatever, sometimes videos don't work the best. So hopefully you can see it. I'm going to play it. It's a really short video, about 35, 40 seconds, but it's just to get you to laugh a little bit before we get into some other stuff here this morning. So here you go.
When you feel the first signs of a cold, use Vicks First Defense. It's a new microgel that attacks the cold virus before it has a chance to turn nasty. New Vicks First Defense. Attack is the best form of defense.
So just a fun video just to show you. I had to laugh when my daughter saw me, or when my daughter saw this presentation a few months ago. I was working on it while she was over visiting. She's like, hey, you did that to me when I was little. And I'm like, yes, I did. We did it in Target. And she's like, oh man. So as a parent myself, trust me, I understand those moments in life where you're just like, oh, okay. But it was just a fun little thing to get you laughing and smiling, hopefully. Some other activities we have, I've included these activities. We won't necessarily go over them. They're hard to do sometimes over Zoom. But what I put them in here is are called strong brain activities. Please understand that your brain has to be worked out constantly for it to continue to get stronger, for the synapses to fire off. And every time you fire off your synapses, they get stronger, which means when I'm learning new information, I process it faster and I can apply it better to my world. And so this is regardless of disability also. And what these are is I put some activities in here. We've been researching these back home in Canada for about the last 8 years. And we're finding that, especially children with some disabilities, they're reconnecting some of their synapses and making them stronger, which allows their brain to process things better and process things faster. A cool caveat to this is we actually started doing some of the research in Alzheimer's and dementia clinics, and we're seeing some interesting improvements in their brain connections too. So these are just fun little things that actually are just workouts for the brain. And the thing you got to remember about these is they're difficult to do, and it's not about actually doing the activity, it's the attempt that gets the brain fired up. So this one's called Flip Out. You can read it. It's there. It's an activity. Parents, do these strong brain activities several times a day with your kids and have fun with them. I got several in the presentation today, and if you always want more, I have about 50 of them at disposal for you to try at home also at any time. These strong brain activities are amazing for social emotional, for behavior, and for academics. So just give them a try, have some fun with them, and literally just do them for 20 seconds, and is all you really got to do. So another thing we're going to look at is this, is we are what we eat. We need to have a serious conversation, parents, about your child's diet. We need to have a serious conversation about everybody's diet in this country. There's been a ton of brain research on this, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. And it is incredible at the direct effect our food has on our brain. We literally are what we eat. And behavior and emotions are the first thing affected by our diets. If you're interested in more information on this, and there's some cool videos, go to Duke University. Duke University it's called the gut-brain axis, and you can look it up. It's all up here on this slide for you to look at. It explains what happens when we eat food and how our stomach, which is our second brain, our stomach is considered our second brain. So whatever we do to our stomach, it shoots everything back up to our brain. And our brain is who we are. Our brain is who we are as human beings, and it affects us as a whole. And so the diets we have got to get better with these with our kids. And I'm being as honest as I can. I got remarried over the COVID, because what else you do when you're quarantined for a year. And I got, 3 stepsons now, and we're working on dietary issues there too. And it is not easy to change diets. Changing the diets is extremely difficult with kids, but we better start with kids, because as they get older, then the problem is they get anchored into those bad eating habits. We are in the United States. I think we have the most obese children of almost any country right now. We have to take this seriously, because literally everything we eat gets processed and gets sent directly to our brain, and it affects our neurotransmitters, our stress, our anxiety, our moods, and our behavior first. Everything you eat affects those big areas first. And it's the same for your kids. The worst foods for us to put in our bodies is processed foods, anything that comes out of a package, pretty much. And so that's going to have a detrimental effect on my behavior and everything else. Just a caveat to this, I put it down here. A lot of our kids with autism have some of the worst diets that we know of. One of the things I do here at Region 10 is I'm a consultant for behavior and autism. I do a lot of work with autism, not just in the States, but I've been down to Mexico. I still work in Vietnam and up in Canada, Hong Kong, and Spain. We've been doing a lot of stuff with autism around these different countries. Diet is huge, and the kids in our country tend to have the worst diets of anybody else. And our kids on the spectrum in this country have some of the worst diets, the Coke, Dorito, chicken nugget, those types of diets. The problem is they're actually doing research, and Duke University is heading up some of this research, that some of the best behavior interventions for kids on the spectrum isn't a therapy at all. It's a diet change. We have families we're working with back home in Canada that one of our kiddos who was really severe on the spectrum. Parents didn't have windows in their house. It was plywood because he broke them all. We had stuff torn off the walls. They had no drywall. It was down to the studs. What happened is we started helping that family change the diet. We made a couple of simple changes that took about a year and a half. That's all it's changed in this child's life. And he's a totally different kid. Just by those simple dietary changes because of how the food affects our brain. So some stuff to look at. If you're interested in it, do some more research for yourselves. I give you some information here to keep going. If you want more, I have lots of articles you can read, lots of places you can go to get more information. So I share this with parents. All parents need to be concerned about what our kids are eating because diet directly affects behavior and mood, like to an extensive degree. So diet is important, and we are what we eat. Another vital topic that I have to talk about, and please forgive me. I'm trying. There's so many things I want to talk to you about today, but sometimes an hour goes away quicker than I think. I mean, my own brain is running an hour in slow motion, but I know the hour's ticking by quick. So whatever I cover in this, please understand, I got a load of research behind all this stuff that you guys can look at and see to help you make your own decisions. I bring you the information not to make you change your world, parents, but to make you think about your world and make you think about what is it that we do for our kids and what can be a better way. There's a lot of people out there trying to get money on all these programs and things like that. And I tell parents all the time, anything that's worthwhile for your kid is actually free. It doesn't cost a dime. And it just really costs time. And so one of the things we're looking at now too, and this is a huge issue in our world right now, is screen time in the brain. Let me just explain this, and I need to be very upfront. Technology itself is neither good nor bad. All of it depends on how we use it. And right now, especially in the United States, it is overused dramatically. Technology is getting used and abused to a point to where there's not much comeback for some of our kids. Technology is one of the most addictive things we have in our society right now. It is actually looked at as being more addictive than some of the hardcore drugs like cocaine, heroin, and all of those, because of what it does to the brain and how it gets the brain and how it grabs the brain. And then it releases dopamine at such a high rate. And dopamine is that pleasure chemical for us. And every time something changes color on a screen, we get a hit of dopamine. And so all these dopamine hits come in, and then it plays with our emotions. If you got kids on social media, we need to be extremely careful. Social media is sending, especially our adolescent girls and our teenage girls, it is sending them down a really tough pathway unless we intervene and get things in place ahead of time. So there's a lot of things to talk about with screen time in the brain. The biggest areas affected are my limbic system and my frontal lobe, my emotional state and my thinking states. It is highly addictive. We joke about it. We call it digital heroin. Problem is if your child's addicted to it, and this is a whole nother training. I have a whole nother training I've done with parents, Canada, Vietnam, and around the world about screen time in the brain, and how to look at the addictive levels of your child, and then how to start paring back the screen time in a smart way so your kids don't go through withdrawal symptoms. Because if they're addicted to their screens and you pull the screen or the phone away from them and take it away, cut cold turkey, they will literally experience similar withdrawal symptoms as someone who's on a hardcore drug. So these are some things to consider. I got some research in here for you to look at, just to take a look at it. Remember, I'm not saying technology is good or bad. I love technology and I love how we can use it to support learning, but it shouldn't be how we learn. The human brain can't actually learn off of a screen. It has to learn in 3D world and then use screens as support. And so these are things that we're looking at to help parents understand, because I still work with lots of parents that sometimes it's just directly get home and give them the iPad because it's what keeps them quiet. Problem is I outsource all my behavior to that piece of technology. And so the only time I'll behave is for that technology. No one's teaching me how to do that behavior in other instances. So there's a lot of things to talk about with this screen time. I could talk forever on this and lots of things to talk about, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. I wanted to give you some information. If you're interested, there's a couple of bigger studies I've given you. If you want to look them up, I kind of included them here for you. And then I believe I got some more. For whatever reason, my screen's not changing on me. Oh, there we go. There's a couple more here to take a look at. There's also, we developed a 24-hour kind of what children should be doing in 24-hour days, to include sleep, exercise, even screen times and things like that. And Canada's released it out, and other countries have used it. And it's another, I didn't put it in here, but if you're interested in it, I can give it to you. It's what is best for your child's development, for their maturity, for their brain development. And it kind of gives you in a 24-hour day, what should it look like for children? And it's from birth to 4. It's from 5 to 9, or 5 to 9, and then like 9 to 19. It's split up. So it's got different age levels to look at. So if you're interested, I got that. I can give it to you also. But just some more information for screen times and just something fun. I don't know how many of you remember phones like this. I joke with people, man, we thought we had it made in the shade when my mom and dad, they bought the extra long extension cord to go on, so I could go around the corner to talk to my friends and not have to sit in the kitchen and talk to them. But it's true, when phones were tied with a wire, we were actually free. Now people don't ever get away from these things. And if they do, they panic because they don't have it with them, which means you're actually addicted to it if that's what happens when you do that. If you forget your phone somewhere and your body kind of is like, oh my goodness, where's my phone? You actually have an addiction to your screen. So, but like I said, that's a whole nother training, but just some information. And if you're interested, I got some information I can share with you. Another activity called the Lazy 8, just a fun activity that gets kids to move their fingers in different ways to do it and stuff like that. Fantastic for a strong brain activity. So I put all the write-up in here so you can try it at home and just have some fun with it. Remember, just 20 seconds is all it takes. And in 20 seconds, you're actually firing up the brain. You're lighting it up like a Christmas tree. So just give it a try, because every time you light up those synapses, they get stronger every time. That's the thing about the human brain, is we can continually make our brain stronger, and to a point to where our brain should be the strongest it's ever been the day we die. However, we've believed the old adage that as we get older, our brains get weaker, we lose out, and our brain starts to deteriorate. Actually, not true. If we continue to work on our brain, we continue to be aware of what our brain needs to do, puzzles, activities like these strong brain activities, keep on learning, keep learning every day, we actually can make our brain stronger and stronger every day that we live. So there's a lot of things that we're finding out through brain research in the last 20 years that is phenomenal. So just some interesting information for you guys to look at. Now, my favorite. This is probably the most favorite thing I ever talk about with parents, because parents are always asking me. And please understand, when you work the world I do, I've been all around this state and still go all around the state working with kids who struggle the most. I deal with the severe behaviors. I deal with the severe emotional issues that go on in children's lives. I deal with the world of autism, where there's this huge struggle, there's huge family struggles, there's all this stuff. So there's lots of things that come into play. And I get excited because the best things we can do for our kids are actually super easy for us to do. And even in the autism world, I'm going to tell you right now, they've been releasing new research. We've been doing brain research in the world of autism, just as an example, for about the last 20 years. And what we found is incredible. What we found out about the autism brain and how it's working and why it does what it does sometimes, and what's happened when they're little that affects how it goes as they get older. And then some of the interventions that we've been using for years, and how they're more of a detriment than they are of a plus. There's actually, some of them are causing trauma versus helping. And some of the things that we can do that are super easy and beneficial. And actually, the 3 of the things on here are actually being researched and showing like amazing results in things like ADD, ADHD, autism, some developmental disabilities, as having beneficial results and good beneficial long-term life results. And so the big 3, I call them, And I tell people it's not programs that make a difference, it's people. It's not what you have or what you have for your child, it's who you have. And parents, you're always number one. It's always you first. So no matter what it is you're doing, you have to understand you are the number one influencer on your child's life, regardless of how you do it. And that's why I got to tell parents, you need to put your technologies down and have that genuine FaceTime with your kids. That's probably the most beneficial therapy that exists on the planet today. Parents, peers, and exercise are the top three things that we're looking at for interventions for a lot of our kids. And that's one thing that I work a lot with parents on is how to reconnect sometimes with their children. How do you get reconnected back? Because, I have one family whose child, they're in school all day, then they go to all this therapy after school, then they get home and they're rushing around to eat. And then it's always like, get ready for bed, do this, and go to bed. So there's none of that connection. It's always like a business transaction. Do this and do this and do this and go to bed. And that's kind of all they get because everybody else, they got their child out to everybody else for most of the day. And I'm trying to teach parents that the benefit comes from you first. So when they lose out time with you, they're losing out time on their intervention because you're the number one intervention. And it's about how do you reconnect back with your kiddo, take away some of those other times so you get that extra time with your child, because that's the benefit we need. And ways to do it. And these are the big three ways for parents. And they're the most important three things to the human brain, period. So play, nature, talking are the three top things we know of today that are beneficial to the human brain. The more you play, the more you're outside, and the more you interact with others, the stronger your brain will become, the stronger your brain will stay throughout your lifetime. And so I can break it down like this real quick for you guys out there. So parents, let's say your child is newborn to age 6. The more they play, the more they're outside, and the more they are around others, being social as they can be, then that is the precursor for brain development. So the more they play, the more they're outside, the more they are social and around other people, the stronger the brain development and the better the brain development will be in the early years. Now, we go from age 6 to 19, which is all of our kids in schools, all of our school age kids from 6 to 19, the more they play, the more they're outside, and the more they are social and talking, the stronger the synapses become in their brain and the stronger the connections for new learning become, which means their brains become quicker at processing, quicker at applying new information, quicker at putting information into memory and storing it and using it later on. Not only that, it actually works for their limbic system. So it's my behavior, my social emotional side. It builds that part of my brain so I'm able to self-regulate better. I'm able to manage my emotions better. I'm able to keep myself under control and have a better understanding of my social emotional world, which is vitally important to my success as a human being later on in life. My social emotional skills and my behavior skills are actually 80% of my success as a human being. 20% comes from my academics and knowledge. 80% comes from that behavior and social emotional side. You need that academic side, but you got to understand that without that ability to regulate my life and regulate my emotions and understand my stress and cope with my stress, I can be as smart as I can be, but I'm not going to make it in life. And so there's these things we talk about, play, nature, and talking. Let me just put it in caveat for us adults. Age 19 till the day you pass on. Play, nature, talking should still be your top 3 priorities to maintain your brain. The more you play, the more you're outside, the more you converse and talk and communicate, the stronger your brain maintains itself through its lifetime. And that is actually preventative medicine for dementia and Alzheimer's that we know of too, especially talking. We found out that talking and communicating with others is actually one of the most preventative things we can do to offset dementia. So it's amazing how strong and how vital these things are for everything from behavior to academics to just my life in general. And so movement in the brain is important. Here's the latest formula for human beings, especially our children in schools, and especially your children when they're getting out and they're leaving the schools, they're going to the workforce. The more they move, the more they learn. The less they move, the less they learn. It is a simple formula. And so movement is key in teaching me how to move when I need to, when it's appropriate. When we're sitting, listening to somebody talk, how is it that I can move to get what I need so my brain can stay alert and awake and has the energy to maintain what I got to do, versus when I'm out moving around with my friends or my family. And so movement is vital to our brain, overall brain, learning, mood, memory, everything. And so there's just a lot of things to look at in this. Movement is huge. And we really have to understand that too. This is something I've been working with our schools for years on, is sit and get doesn't work for the human brain. The human brain actually does not learn very well when it sits. When the body sits, the brain will shut off. We found out recently that school age kids, once they sit in a seat and they start getting taught a lesson, the brain actually starts shutting itself down after 30 seconds. Unless the kids are moving around somehow or are fidgeting. Drawing is a big thing. Drawing is actually more important to learning than taking notes. And so these are things we're learning through the brain research. Parents, take this information and think about home too. You can utilize these same things at home, get them to move more. You got chores to do, have chores that have them push and pull things, reach and put down. There's lots of things. Chores are vital to the family structure. And chores are vital for your child to have, to learn how family structure works and things like that. That is important skills for them to have in life also. So movement's huge. There's a study that was released. I show people this all the time. So 10 minutes of cardiovascular exercise, which is just even walking, just walk. If you walk for 10 minutes, it actually increases the blood flow to the part of your brain that's associated with memory by 47%. So those of you, as we get older, worrying about our memory, walk, just go for a 10-minute walk. It increases the blood flow. But here's the kick. Here's the fun part. The kicker to all this is that blood flow increase actually saw people who did, and this was a study done with thousands of people, from very young children to very, very, how do I say this play? Just older people. But what they saw was just 10 minutes of that aerobic exercise, walking, running, whatever it is you do that's aerobic, 10 minutes of that increases their memory and memory application. And for children, test scores by 46%. 10 minutes of walking, you get almost a 50% increase in your ability to use your memory. Think about what that means for even our kids when they're trying to remember to do something. Let them walk for 10 minutes and then have them go do something. They will remember it almost 50% more. Or they'll be able to pull their memories out and use their memories to attach to new learning up to 50% more. So there's a lot of cool stuff we're finding out. And parents, teach your kids how to move. You're sitting somewhere, a lot of parents go to church. You go to church and your kids, teach them how to move appropriately while they're sitting in church. There's ways to do it that keep the body somewhat moving to give enough energy for the brain to keep going. So there's lots of things to look at. Recess is a must. I won't go into it to detail. I put that in there more for my school people. But recess is an absolute must, even for us adults, just FYI. When we become adults, we don't call it recess, but it better be time you get yourself outside, you do something fun, you move around, you go play, you go for a walk, you go do some activity. That's our recess, and it has to stay in place even as we get older. We can't take that away from ourselves. It's a detriment to so many things for us as a human being. So just some things to look at. Parents, that movement, that moving around is so vital for your kids, and teaching them how to do it in different areas of their life. When you're shopping, how do you teach them how to move around shopping? Pushing a cart is great. Standing by the cart, or send them on down an aisle, get something, come back. It keeps them going and moving and engaged. It's when they sit there and you give them an iPad or you give them a phone to look at while you're shopping, then the brain starts to shut down, and then behaviors will increase. Their learning ability decreases. They're not actually paying attention to what the setting is and how people are moving around this setting, and how, I might even scream and throw a tantrum in a store when you take me. But to me, that's important because they have to learn that this isn't appropriate and this is how we work on this behavior in this particular setting. And I don't learn that if everybody's just going to keep me quiet by giving me something to do. So there's lots of things to look at with this as we parents are looking at bringing our kids getting them ready for that world they're going to go into, because it's a big world. I put this in here, parents. You can take a look at this. Take a look at the areas your child might be struggling, what parts of the brain are affected with those struggles, and then plan activities you guys can do together to make those parts of the brain stronger. These activities strengthen these parts of the brain. And these parts of the brain, I put in here what they do. Like if your child has trouble with attention, that's the cerebellum. Sports drills are good for that. Like running and kicking a soccer ball in a net and doing sports drills, because you're always having to switch things and it's having to draw your attention out and makes it stronger. So there's lots of things to do. If your child struggles with emotional outbursts and behavior at home, and they get really angry or anxious, or they're impulsive, yoga is amazing for that. Not just yoga, but martial arts. Any of the martial arts are phenomenal to help my body get stronger and better, and my brain to get stronger on keeping my emotions regulated. So there's lots of things on here that you as parents can utilize for play and for different things at home to help strengthen those parts of your kiddos' brains. So play, just some things with play, you can look at it. Play is actually the number one thing that we know of for brain health, brain development, brain strengthening, and overall brain health. Play is actually the number one thing for our brains that we know of today. Unfortunately, it's the one thing we've taken out of our society the most. I really wish we would consider what we're doing with play, not just at schools, but parents also. And it's just play, to go out and play. Whatever it looks like, kicking a ball, playing catch, playing hide and seek, playing tag, anything, play. Symbolic play is important. Like give your kid a box and some scissors and some glue, make them turn it into something. If they have the ability to look at something like a box and see that they can turn it into something, that is an amazing skill the brain needs to have. Play is actually researched to be the number one thing that develops critical thinking and problem solving in human beings. The more we play, the better our critical thinking and problem solving becomes. You can't like specifically just teach the brain how to problem solve. It has to naturally figure it out in settings that play brings in order to apply to something like a word problem in math. And so there's a lot of things we're finding that's really super incredible about the human brain. And play, parents, who knew? You're in a training today and you got a guy telling you, hey, get your kids to play more. And I always tell people, I go against the grain sometimes in education. I'm not a homework person. What I'd rather see is, instead of homework, kids go home and parents, you play, you take them outside and you talk to them. That would be bigger benefit to any academic gains we're looking for than homework would ever be. It's just a tough go because of where we've always looked at, and it's always hard to make change, but that's something to look at as parents. You want to help your kids play. The more you play with them, the better their brains are going to be. And that is regardless, I'm telling you, regardless of disability, regardless. One of my favorite quotes, you can take a look at it. Nature. So now this is the next one. Outside. Let's get ourselves outside. It is gorgeous out today. I'm a cold weather person. So when it was like 50 degrees, I was outside and I just loved every second of it. Not a big fan of the Texas heat, even though I've lived in Texas for a lot of years. Still hard to get used to. I know it's going to be hot because it's Texas, but 100 degrees is just not something I look forward to, but I still get outside. Outside. Number one is just by leaving your house or leaving the school and stepping outside, just as soon as your body gets to the outdoors, it lowers your stress level by about 10% immediately, just by stepping outside. If you go outside and you interact with nature, you go on a hike, you're in amongst trees, you have plants around you, you touch the plants, you're interacting, you go climb a tree, your stress will exponentially continue to lower while you're doing that. Nature is one of the few things we know of that immediately lowers stress levels in human beings, just by being outside. There's a lot of kids that people talk about who are runners or elopers or whatever fancy term they want to give them now, but there's lots of kids who will try and run away. A lot of times it's their body trying to get out of this building and get me outside, because that outside actually calms me down. And so sometimes with parents, I know it's difficult. I work with lots of parents whose kids will run out of the house in the middle of the night. And we work on like nature therapy, we call it. It's really not a thing. We just nicknamed it that because everybody wants to put therapy after everything nowadays. But it's just getting outside. And they're getting their child outside more and more through the day. And they found out that he no longer sneaks out of the house at night. His body's getting what it needs outside in that nature. It's a huge connection between our bodies and nature, a huge connection. And so that's something to look at. And so what I put in here is there's some numbers here. 1,440 is the number of minutes in 24-hour days. So in 24 hours, that's 1,440 minutes. 210, that other number there, that's how many minutes per day every school age child should be outside. 210 minutes is what the brain needs for the child to be outside every day for proper brain development, proper brain strengthening, and proper brain maintenance as we become adults. That's roughly 3.5 hours a day. Most of our kids aren't anywhere near that. 1,368 is actually the number 2 years ago that school age kids in the United States spent indoors. 72 is the number of minutes on average school age kids in the United States were outside. 1/3 of what's appropriate. Now I'm going to explain this in the COVID years. Since COVID hit, that number has dropped, and the last number I saw was 65 minutes is the average outside time for most of our children in this country at school age. That is less than 1/3 of what we need for brain development, brain maintenance, and brain strengthening. Not to mention, it's actually safer outside than it is indoors health-wise. But most of the time, our kids are indoors. Schools are part of that problem, but also parents, you get your kids outside, put them out in the backyard, let them go do something. If you don't live in a neighborhood that's very safe, go out with them, take them to a park. When I was raising my 2 kids, I was a single dad, and I was raising my 2 kids. I couldn't afford a lot of stuff. So what I would do is there was a park about a mile away. We just get in after school, and that's where we went every day after school, just go to the park and spend 45 minutes to an hour there and come home. I did what I could, and that's what I just encourage parents: do what you can and get your kids outside as much as possible. Just in case you're wondering, adults, all of us who are adults, that's 19 and older, they still want us outside 150 minutes a day. Most of us adults aren't anywhere near that. The adult numbers are probably worse than the kid numbers. So get yourself outside. It's vital for brain maintenance, for your brain to remain strong and to lower your stress. So there you go. Some advice to the parents too. What's good for your kids is also good for you. If you've noticed, everything I have given you so far and will continue to give you it's vital for your kids and their brain development and their behavior, their emotions, their academics and their mental health, their overall well-being. But guess what? Because we're all human beings and because all of our brains need the same thing, it's also good for my adults out there. And this is why I want to get people to understand it is this easy. It is that simple. I have way too many parents paying way too much money for all these things. And it's really simpler than that. And sometimes we go difficult before we go simple. And so what I tell parents is I can't tell you what to do or not do for your kiddo, but I'm going to give you some friendly things that we know through brain research are the absolute best for your child, regardless of their disability, regardless of where they're at, that you can do that aren't going to cost anything for you. And it's going to be a benefit to the relationship between you and your child also. It's going to build that connection, which is one of the most vital things we need for all of our kids is the connection to their parent. That's the number one priority I have for our kids, is that connection to parents. And so this helps build that as well as take care of all your brains. And so I had another video, I'll send it to you if you're interested, but there's schools back home in Canada, and now Seattle has 2 schools, I believe, that it's mandated that they spend 2 hours a day outside at school. Teachers are teaching outside. Teachers are doing stuff outside with the kids for a minimum 2 hours a day. Phenomenal results. I will share. So anybody in here who knows about this stuff called ADD, ADHD, I know it's out there. It's everywhere. So what they found out through these schools and doing research on these schools is that if you have ADD, ADHD, being outside for 20 minutes and doing activity outside for 20 minutes is equivalent to you taking one of your pills, or one of your doses of medication. So there's some interesting things we find out through all this stuff. Talking and socializing, phenomenal things. You have to be in contact with other human beings. Now, this is where I really got to snicker sometimes. I, by nature, am a big introvert. Like, I am not a social person at all. I do socialize, but I socialize probably to a less degree than most people. It's not a bad thing. It's just who I am. And the thing of it is, working in the autism world, the social side of the autism world, people's like, oh, well, they're just not social. No, they have a level of being social, but it's not that they don't want to be. There's other issues behind it. Like I said, the brain research has opened up some huge findings on the socialization piece of that. But it's not that they don't want to be. It's just that they're not always the most social people. It's not bad, but being social means social to the level that you are comfortable with. And as long as you stay and maintain that comfort level of being social and you're not totally shut out from everybody else, your brain's going to be okay. And it's actually amazing. They found out that the more social a human being is, the healthier their brain is as they get older. And like I said earlier, it also is one of the most protective things we have that we know of today that protects against cognitive impairment and dementia. And so just some things, it's like, don't force your kids to just be super social. Look at the comfort level they have of it right now and just help them try to increase it little by little as it goes along. But as long as they're social somehow, online, texting, playing video games, talking to my friends through video games does not count. It's got to be face to face in front of a human being in order for it to be a benefit. It can't be virtual social. It's got to be face to face. So that's a caveat to this. So just some information. Socialization is absolutely vital to brain health also. And it just depends on how much is good for me. And sometimes, just because you're social and I'm not, doesn't mean there's something wrong. It's just, that's all I need for socialization. I'm good with that. Parents, if your child is very kind of introverted, they do have a hard time talking to people, you have to watch too, because you have to look to see if are they getting what they need, or are they shutting themselves off? If they're shutting themselves off, we need to get them kind of back in the game of socialization. But if you want any information on that, or you want any help with that, just let me know. It's easy to look at and easy to gauge and easy to help with too. It's really easy to work with the socialization piece, way easier than most people think. By the way, for those of you out there whose kids are going through social skills programs or social skills things, please understand the only thing that helps our brain learn how to be social is to actually go be social. You can't take me into a room and teach me about social skills and then release me out. I have to be social. Being social has to happen with good role models, with people that I can interact with that will be good role models. I have to do it that way. That's how socialization works. And that's how our brain learns it. Our brain doesn't learn socialization in isolation. It only learns to be social when it's in a social setting. Peers are phenomenal for this. Their peers, friends, they're probably the best. Parents, you're a close second. Teachers are a close third. So there's a group of people that you can work on the socialization with. Good role models. I always tell parents, they watch us, they don't listen to us. So just be aware of your own social cues and how you manage things too, because they're going to mimic you at school. Don't believe me, my own kids mimicked me at school. And I might have got a phone call or two. So, it is what it is. They do watch us. So just some information for you guys in regards to that. The wave is an activity. I have it written up and it will be sent in, but the wave is really easy. You just get to wave your hands in different places and it works out your brain, believe it or not. It's a fun little thing to do with your kids, or, do it as adults we have friends over, do these with your friends and just tell them, hey, I'm going to strengthen your brain a little bit. So that's an activity. I'm going to try and get a couple last things in here for you guys, and then we're going to wrap it up. So balance. Balance is extremely important to the human brain. And please understand, regardless of the physical abilities of our kids, we can still help them work on balance. I had a high schooler I worked with. He was He was in a wheelchair. He wasn't able to move a lot of his body. He was able to hold his arm up. And so for balance, what we did is we held his arm and put a ball there, and he had to balance the ball and not let it fall out. And that's how we practice balance with him. With other people, as your kids are standing up, just have them stand on one leg and just alternate legs that they stand on. I put a write-up in here, but our ability to balance is extremely important. When I talk to adults, I ask adults, when you go for your physical or when you've been checked out by a doctor, do you ever notice that they ask you just to stand on one foot and then stand on the other foot? They're not actually looking at balance. If you actually, within the second or two they make you do that, you start to teeter, it's actually a sign that there might be some brain issues going on. It's actually a quick way to check brain health. So if you have bad balance, don't panic. You can always work on your balance. No matter how good or bad your balance is, you can actually work on it every single day and make it better. And when you make your balance better, you make your brain stronger. And balance is actually one of the things that the more you work on balancing, we actually found out that it has a biggest effect on your learning ability and your emotional regulation. Just by working on balance. I know, who knew? But there's several areas of the brain that work together when you work on balance. And a lot of those areas have a big factor in building the part of our brain that helps us with emotional regulation and learning. So there's some activities here. Give them a shot. Anything you can do to practice balancing, do it. Do it every day, all day, as much as you can. Balance is vitally important to all of us and our brain health. So as I wrap up today, life isn't about how you manage plan A. It's about how you cope with plan B as you're creating plan C. That is basically our lives as parents. It isn't for COVID or anything else. It's just parents. We as parents know full well that it never tends to work out the way we want. So we always have backup plans. This is something I need my parents. You got to take care of yourselves. If you're not good for you, you're no good to your kids. So if you're stressed out, you're having troubles, there's all kinds of things in life happening. How do you deal and manage with that? Because if you're not, it's directly affecting your children. And actually it'll affect them more than it affects you. And it's not good. And the areas it affects is all about the brain, and it's going to affect their behavior and their academics first. So you wouldn't let this happen to your phone. Don't let it happen to you. Fill yourself up. And so with that, and with this picture, I put some resources in here for you guys for trauma, mental health. Please, that first one says support for teachers affected by trauma. It's an amazing site for adults, period. And it's just great things that you can look at. It's like you can find out where you're struggling, and it gives you some resources, it gives you some help to ways that you can start working on yourself too. Alberta Family Wellness. Alberta is a province back home in Canada. I do a lot of work up there with them, and a lot of the brain stuff we put into this website for the particular group that made this website. You can go there. You can get lots more information on things you can do with your kids at home to help with that brain development, no matter the age. From birth to, if they're 35 and still living at home, then there's things you can do to help them out. It doesn't matter the age. So it's a great free resource. Take advantage of it. They love to see people from all over the world utilize it because they just want it to help families. And it's all about family wellness. So these are books that I've used, a lot of the research I find. I have lots of research articles. I think I'm up to about 1,100 of them on my laptop right now because I read and I look at the research. I work with colleagues around the world on brain research. And what I try to do is take what we know about the brain and how does that look for us as parents and us as educators. And so there's some information for you right there. Again, remember, don't let yourself drain out. I'm not a glass is half full or half empty person. The glass is refillable. Keep filling your glass up so you can fill your kids' glass up. If your glass is empty, you got nothing to give your kids, and it just isn't going to be good. So you need help, get help. I'm always available. If there's resources that are available, I can give you information, whatever it is you need, parents. You're never in this by yourselves. I'll always be there by your side if you need help. So you just let me know. Like I said, I got plenty of parents on speed dial right now that, when they're struggling, they'll send me a text or give me a call and we find resources for them. Or sometimes parents have a pretty good ear. Sometimes parents just need to vent and yell and scream. about life and everything that's going on. And then we walk through it and help you out and get you out of it. So, whatever it is you need, you let me know. And my favorite quote is this. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. There's my email. If you ever need anything, shoot me an email. I did not put my cell number up there. I thought it was on there already, but I did not. So just shoot me an email, and usually my cell number is attached to my email when I reply back. And you guys, if there's ever anything I can do, you let me know. And so there it is. I think I did it in about an hour, almost to the minute.